Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Showing Up to Your Life podcast and YouTube channel. My name is Art Burns, and I'm so excited. I'm even more excited than usual today to share some thoughts with you, and I'm just really excited today. So I hope you're feeling the excitement, and I hope you get to tap into it with me because it feels really, really, really good. So welcome back, and thank you again for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and thank you everyone for all the wonderful comments that you send me. It really just, I say this a lot, and I said it yesterday, I know. I think I said it yesterday, but it really just makes my day every time I get to see that. It just makes me so happy every time I get a message from one of you, and just the encouragement that I get from knowing that people are out there watching and listening and benefiting from these little talks that I give. So thank you, everyone. And if you're thinking about writing an email or putting a comment in one of these videos, please go ahead and do it. I can't tell you how much I love it. So thank you, everyone. So today I want to kind of jump off of what we were talking about yesterday a little bit. Yesterday we were talking about how the emotions of fear give way to the emotions of grief or shame or anger, and these are what's going to cause stress in our lives, right? These emotions themselves, right, are going to cause our body to go into a state of survival mode, right, where our heart rate is increased, our blood pressure is increased, all kinds of things in this system, this organism that we walk around in all day, just gets thrown off and gets put into an actually pretty dangerous place if we project that out over the course of a lifetime. The more often we're getting into that space of stress, the more dangerous it becomes for our health, and of course it sabotages our well-being in many, many different ways, right? It causes conflict. It causes, when we have a reactivity to something that somebody says, it causes more conflict and more reactivity, and it compounds and it builds itself, and it becomes something that can be really, really powerful. And it's never just that one thing that happens. I mean, sure, we have big things that happen in our lives, big, very dramatic experiences that, of either love or fear and anger and all that, but it's not really the big things that make the big difference, right? It's a tiny little incremental thing that happens, and that's one of the reasons why when we talk about mindfulness and we talk about heartfulness, the real essence of what these practices are, right, is the fact that it's a moment to moment awareness, right? So it's really a tiny thing, right? It's looking at each moment that we have, each decision that we make, each thought that we have, each word that we speak, each action that we take, is an opportunity, right? And that's what mindfulness is, right? Mindfulness is paying attention on the moment-to-moment basis so that we can make those decisions, say those words, have those thoughts, take those actions, which are going to, push us to the side of love, and not just because we want, positive and all that kind of stuff. It's okay to feel the negative. It's okay to feel the shame, the guilt, even the anger, those things, and the fear. It's not that we're trying to block that out, right? I was very clear about that yesterday or the day before. But more what it is recognizing those things, right? Noticing them, recognizing them, understanding them, right? Turning towards them and understanding what they are and where they're coming from, so that we can move to the opposite way. Because what we know is that those emotions, right, and the thoughts and the sensations and the circumstances that feed those emotions, right, those are what are making people sick, right? And I was one of those people for a long, long time. As I've told you here before, a few years ago, I lost 100 pounds of body weight. I used to drink like a sailor, as they say. I was gonna say drink like a fish, but that's not true. Fish don't drink. But that's kind of odd about them, right? Because they live in water. But anyway, the idea is that it creates not only a moment to moment unhappiness and a moment to moment level of discomfort and unease, but in the long run, it creates a very, very high level of unhappiness and unhealthiness, right? And so what mindfulness and heartfulness ask us to do, they invite us to come into this moment to moment experience, this moment to moment awareness of our experience, so that we can take those actions, have, think those thoughts, experience those emotions that gratify us, that nourish us, that make us whole, right? Which is the word healthy, comes from the Greek word that means whole, right? So the idea is that we're trying to, put back the pieces that a lot of these, other emotions have broken us apart, right? Like when we engage in the emotions that result in the stress, what we're doing is we're kind of fracturing ourselves a little bit, and we're making ourselves unhealthy, unwhole, right? And so the idea is, that again, if we look at it, a lot of times what we do in our lives, and I've said this before a lot, and it's worth repeating, right? That in our lives, we tend to kind of view the span of our lives in big chunks of time. I was on the call this morning with a wonderful client of mine. What up, James? I was on the call with him this morning, and we were talking about, like, he mentioned something like, he's like, he said something about, like, back in the late 80s, early 90s, I used to do this thing, and it was like, and that's how we look at things, right? We look at things in decades, or like, or huge swaths of time of our lives, right? Like my, like I would look at my life, for instance, as the segment of my life I was a father, and then there was another segment of my life in which I was a husband, and there's another segment in my life in which I was single, and there's another segment in my life in which I was a teenager, and then a grammar schooler or middle schooler or whatever, and then I was a child. And that's how we're looking at lives, and each one of these things is like 10 to 15 years of time, and that's, of course, one level. We also, when we're planning out things with work and with, schedules of our lives, we're looking at, weeks and months and years, and even if it's hours, right, that we're examining our lives and sort of, breaking things down, even hours is way larger than the reality, right? Because the reality is that life happens moment by moment, right? And in fact, there are neuroscientists out there who divide up every second of your experience and can tell, like, the times that you're reacting automatically to something and the time that you're aware of something. They're literally splitting seconds. Right? This is a neuroscientific reality, right? Is that our lives are really measured moment by moment. And the reason I say that, right, is because each moment is an opportunity, right? Each single moment that you have, let's call a moment, the moment really doesn't exist within clock time, right? The moment is just now, right? At one point in my life, I would walk around, and anybody who asked me what time it was, I would say, it's now, and that's what the truth is, right? That there is only now. Everything else, that's the only thing that is real, is now, right? And the only time that we can say now is now. Right? It's now, right? So if you want to put it in terms of a clock time, it's like second by second, right? Which means that we have billions of opportunities in our lives to do things that either are going to make us whole and make us healthy, or are going to make us broken and make us unhealthy, right? And the point is, though, that we have the choice. Right? During my call this morning with James, and with another call right after James, I told a story that I like to tell a lot. It was told to me many years ago. It's been told to me by a couple of different teachers, and I just love that when I hear the same thing from a couple of different sources. Like, okay, we get it. This is awesome. And the story is a traditional Native American story. That you may have heard, and I'm just going to share it real quick here for you. I don't know exactly. It's shared by many different American Native American nations, and the story, basically, the gist of it is as follows, right? There's a coming of age ceremony, right? And there's a young boy of the tribe, of the nation, and there's a shaman of the same tribe, of the same nation. And the shaman is conducting this coming of age ceremony, right, for the boy who's coming of age. And so the shaman tells this boy that inside of him, inside of all of us, there are two wolves, right? One wolf represents compassion, cooperation, generosity, altruism, love, attraction, kindness, right? And the other wolf represents, animosity, greed, conquest, aggression, anger, violence, right? And inside of you, from the moment that you are born to the moment that you take your last breath in this world, these two wolves are fighting for dominance, right? And of course, the young boy says, well, which one wins, right? And the shaman says to him, it's the one that you feed. Okay, and that to me is the essence of what I'm talking about here, right? Is that the idea, and further than that, there's well, anyway, I'll get to that in a second. The idea is that with everything that we do, right, as I said before, every action, every thought, every sensation, every emotion that we engage in, right, is feeding one of these two wolves, right? And as I told you yesterday, one of the most profound things about the about the complexity of the human brain, in my opinion, is that it can't do both things at once. It's fascinating. Like as much power as our brains have, we literally cannot be feeding the generosity and the greed at the same time. We literally cannot do it. Okay, and so this tells us, right? This tells us something really, really important, and this is what I'm talking about here, right? That we have the opportunity to, in every single moment, we have the opportunity to feed that part of us that is going to be healthy, is going to be kind, is going to be generous, is going to be well, right? We have that opportunity to feed our well-being, or we have the opportunity to feed the opposite of our well-being. We can't feed both at once, right? And it's really, really a very, very important concept to understand, because that is the whole idea of mindfulness, right? Is that when we can be attuned and aware of every moment as it is passing, as it is arising, it is existing, and then it is passing, right? When we can be aware of it, then we have a level of control over it, right? And that's what happens to most of us, right? While we are planning our lives in chunks of hours or days or weeks or months or years or decades or phases of life, right? Like the single, the married, the children. When we're looking at our lives in these big grand scales and thinking about, okay, what am I going to do when I retire? Or, how am I going to buy that house? Or how am I going to buy that car? And, we're thinking, these big grand scale things, mostly either in the future or in the past. We don't notice these little momentary opportunities that we have to nourish that part of us, which is going to wind up getting the house and getting the success, or at least, if whether you get the house or not, the thing that is going to make us happy, right? Because that's the other thing, right? Is that when people do practice this, right? When people practice to the point where they notice moment by moment where they are, right? What is their current emotional state right now? Because that's the first step, right? We have to be able to notice it. We have to be able to pay attention to what it is that we're feeling. Otherwise, again, we have no chance of actually changing anything, right? If we're not noticing the moment by moment opportunities, then there's no hope of actually, capitalizing on those moment to moment opportunities, right? And so most of us live our lives without this awareness, right? And what happens then is that years and years and years go by, right? I mean, even it doesn't even take years, even days go by and we're in a bad mood, right? We're in this like funk. And while we're in that funk, right? Because something happened, right? So something happens on Monday morning. I go to work and I'm feeling all grumpy because it's Monday morning, and I've trained myself and I practiced my whole life to hate Monday mornings, right? And I get to work on Monday morning, and there's a bothersome email that's that somebody said something to the boss that made me look bad or something like that. And now for the next like 4 days, I'm in this like bad mood over this thing that happened, right? Of course, it's just a random example. I'm sure you can place together something in your world, in your life, that would kind of align with this. But now for the next few days, I'm in this bad mood, right? Well, what happens in those few days, right? Every time life reaches out to interact with me, I'm not there for it, right? I'm not there for it because I'm stuck in this emotion of maybe it's anger, maybe it's shame, maybe it's guilt, maybe it's fear, whatever it is. I cannot live in the moment because I'm all wrapped up in that emotion, right? And again, the problem is that I don't even notice it. And that's the days go by and I've been in this funk and I had no idea that I was even in the funk, right? So how could I possibly change it? Yet the other way, right, when we practice mindfulness, right, first of all, Monday morning doesn't seem so bad because it's just another morning, and we train ourselves to see that, right, and to not judge Monday morning as something other than what it really is. But then when we get that email, right, if we're practicing mindfulness, what we do is we notice what is happening inside of us as we're reading that email. And we can notice that we're feeling that emotion, that whatever it is, whether it's the anger or it's the guilt or it's the fear or it's the shame, whatever it is, we can notice it, right? And once we can notice it in that moment, now we can choose to understand it, right? We can choose to turn towards it and say, what is it about this email that's making me feel this way, right? Is it really the email that's making me feel this way? Or is it some sort of latent, implicit, memory or sensation that I have that's making me feel this way? Where is this really coming from? And now, once, the minute I've done that, right, the second that I've done that, the second that I've drawn my attention to it and kind of stepped back a little bit and looked at it, all of a sudden I am not under its control anymore. And now I have this choice I can make, right? And I can say, well, maybe it's self-compassion that I have to feel for myself and I have to express for myself. And maybe there's a little exercise I can do, which I can show you an exercise you can do in that moment, right? And to bring yourself away from the anger or the guilt or the shame, right? Maybe it's a self-compassion exercise I need to do. Maybe it's a compassion exercise for the person who wrote the email or for my employer or what have you, right? But the point that I'm making is that in that moment, when I notice this thing that is happening, this thing that is arising, this emotion, this thought, this understanding is arising, in that moment, I have the opportunity to do something about it, right? And again, I have the opportunity to see, okay, what part of me am I feeding? Because we all have the potential. That's the point of the two wolves story, right? Is that we all have the potential to be aggressive, selfish, greedy, violent, judging, angry, mean. We all have that potential in us, right? But we also all have the potential to be the opposite, right? The potential to be compassionate, to be forgiving, to be loving, to be caring, to be generous, altruistic. We all have both potentials in us, right? And so therefore, which one am I choosing to feed, right? Another thing, what I was going to say before, I almost digress, but Another quote that came to mind is one that was told to me by a dear man who years and years ago I used to own this little bagel shop, and in the bagel shop I did this art show for these little kids like 6 and 7 years old. It was the cutest thing. It was a person who was living in the town where my bagel shop was. She went to the pet shelter, right, and she took photographs of these dogs and cats, and the kids, these 6 and 7, 8-year-old kids, were made to paint the cat from the photograph into a scene in which they want to see the cat adopted. And then what they did was they did an art show in my bagel shop, and they auctioned off these pictures, right? So you had like grandparents bidding against each other. This woman raised like a couple $1,000s, I think, or a few $100s, like off of these little kids, and they donated it all to the animal shelters. And so during that little, we also had an opening for the kids, right? So I made a bunch of pizza bagels and got juice boxes, and the kids all dressed up, and they did this opening with all the other galleries in town and stuff. It was just the most precious thing you could ever see. And anyway, but during this party, one of my other customers, who wasn't even actually a father, he was just stopping by because he heard about it and he loved the idea, and he pulled me aside and he said, at the time, in that town where I used to live, Beacon, New York, there was a very famous and well-known folk musician named Pete Seeger, who was living in the town at the same time. He was like 90 years old at that point, and he was like a hero of the town, and he came into my bagel shop a couple times. I had a sandwich named after him. His grandchildren used to come in. It was just a great scene. But anyway, this person pulled me aside and he said, "Did you know about the quote from Pete Seeger?" He said, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something to the effect of, Pete says that the world will be saved 1 teaspoon at a time. Right? And that speaks exactly to what I'm talking about, right? It's not the grand act. It's not the huge event in our life that is going to make us happy and make us healthy, right? It's the little teaspoons, moment by moment. It's the little opportunities that we have to be generous with ourselves, to make eye contact with people and share heartfelt feelings with people. It's these little moment by moment opportunities that we have to either feed that teaspoon to the wolf inside of us that represents the love and the goodness and the health and the well-being, or the teaspoon goes to the wolf that represents the opposite, right? The one wolf represents our health, the other wolf represents our illness, right? Our trauma. And so we have the opportunity in every single moment, right? Now, does that mean we have to be perfect every single moment? Absolutely not. That's the whole point, right? Is that we can, you can have, 20 different moments in which you fed that negative wolf, right? But if you remember on the 21st, and you notice on the 21st, and you decide at that moment to feed the other wolf, well, then you've changed everything, right? And so every single moment offers this opportunity, right? And if you remember, the 4 constituents of well-being that I talk about a lot, right? Resilience is at the top of that list, right? Which means that in any given moment, we have the opportunity to be resilient and to return to this baseline of wellness. Right? We can go from a place of agitation to a place of calm. We can go from a place of anger to a place of kindness. We can go from a place of jealousy to a place of generosity, right? Like that is our choice in every single moment. But in order to make that choice, in order to even have the choice to make, we have to notice it first. Right? And that's what these practices are all about, right? When we practice our attention moment by moment, when we practice being aware of what is happening inside our body and externally around us moment by moment, then we get good at it, right? Because again, as I say here a lot, we're practicing one way or the other. right? Just like, every single moment that goes by, you are feeding one of the two wolves. It's never that you're not feeding anybody. It's never that you're just kind of sitting out on the sideline. That's not how life works, right? You are always either feeding one or you're feeding the other. You're practicing something or you're practicing the other, right? And when we can commit and set the intention and with a little help and a little coaching, when we can learn how to and become consistent with choosing to pay attention to what is happening and practice practice that awareness, that acceptance, that presence, that compassion, that curiosity. When we choose to practice that in any given moment, that is our opportunity to return to what we want to be, right? And of course, the other three constituents of well-being, in addition to resilience, the next one is outlook, right? The ability to see the positive potential in ourselves, in others, in situations, right? The third is attention, right? Paying attention to each moment. And finally, the fourth and my favorite is generosity. Right? So in any given moment, you have this opportunity, right? You have this power. It's not something that I have to give to you. It's not something you have to buy and take as a pill or as a drink. It's not something that you have to earn. It's not something that you have to work for. Well, a little bit you have to work for it because it does require practice, right? Because again, most of us in this world, in this, society of Western society, have been practicing not the wellness. We've been practicing the opposite. Most of us are feeding that other wolf, right? That wolf that represents aggression, anger, greed, right? Most of us are doing that. And that's just the reality, right? It doesn't mean you're a bad person for doing it. It means that that's just what you've known to do, right? So it does take a little bit of work. But the beautiful thing is the work feels really, really good, right? That's the amazing thing that I try to tell all of my clients as I'm describing the fact. Sometimes I see their eyes sort of glaze over as I'm talking about. Okay, we're going to do this practice, then we're going to do this practice, then we're going to do. They're like, oh my gosh, this is so much work, and I'm like, no. You don't understand. Like, these practices are like, like this practice is like drinking the most delicious cup of tea. This practice is like taking the most delicious nap of your life. This practice is like making love. These things feel really, really good. And so it's not hard, but it is effort. And if you're willing to take a little bit of that effort and to work a little bit, then all of this can be yours, and you can be well. You can be happy, because that's the thing. As we feed that wolf inside of us that represents all of this kindness and goodness and positivity, right? Again, it's not about ignoring the other wolf. We know it's still there, and it's always there, and all we got to do is feed it a little bit and it'll come right back to life. It's not about banishing that, right? It's about honoring it, but it's about honoring it through the compassion and the kindness and the generosity, right? And so if you're willing to take this step, I'm willing to take this step with you. And so if you'd like to talk about getting some coaching on how to do this, some people after 4 or 5 weeks, that's all they need. They're like, I'm good, Art. Thanks for changing my life. I got this. Other people like the session so much that we work for over a year together. So if you want to check that out, just got to give me a call. That's all you got to do. Just give me a call, and I'm happy to talk to you, okay? It's a free first call, okay? So head over to my website, artburnscoaching.com, or send me leave a comment in the YouTube, or send me a direct message on whatever platform you're watching this video, and just get in touch with me. And let's just have a conversation, and let's talk about how you can feed your wellness, your happiness, right? Because happiness is the natural position, right? Happiness is the way we're supposed to be, right? Because remember what I said yesterday is that the fear and the jealousy and the anger and all those different emotions, right? Those things make us sick, right? Those things take away our happiness and they make us ill, right? They cause us to have maladaptive coping mechanisms. They break our body down. They make us unwell. But the other, right? The love, the compassion, the kindness, the generosity, the positive outlook, right? The attention, the resilience to go from this to this, right? That makes us well. And when we're well, we're happy. When we're unwell, we're unhappy. It is that simple, folks. Okay, I mean, frankly, psychiatrists would not like to hear me say this probably because it's so simple, right? And it really is that simple. So let me tell you more about it, and let's see if we can take this journey together. I would be so honored to do that with you. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I wish you well. I'll be back again tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.